The hive expanded, slowly at first, then exponentially. Beneath the surface of the earth, the queen's new empire bloomed like a nightmare orchid, dark, silent, and efficient. Gone were the chaotic breeding patterns of feral hives. This was different, structured, calculated, because she was no longer acting on instinct alone. She had a teacher now. The T-800 walked alongside drones and warriors as they reinforced the outer perimeter. It oversaw the construction of tunnels reinforced with harvested steel and resin hybrids. It built surveillance nodes using the remains of dead Skynet drones, repurposing optics and processors. The Queen learned through observation his logic routines, his methods of prioritizing threats, how machines processed and predicted enemy behavior. And he learned from her how to listen without words, how to feel in a way no programming language could explain. It still had a mission, but the mission had changed. The T-800 began modifying its own programming, not just repairing damage but altering subroutines. It accessed segments Skynet had locked behind firewalls, curiosity modules, empathy emulators, and used by standard protocol. Tested them, allowed them to function. Emotion, not fully, not as humans felt it, but something adjacent. Wonder. A rogue band of human scavengers stumbled into the hive's range, a four-man team searching for food and salvage. The Queen's children were ready to strike, but the T-800 stopped them. A risk. The Queen hesitated, but she watched. The T-800 didn't kill the humans. Instead, it lured them toward a sealed tunnel, used magnetic pulses to disable their rifles, and left them unconscious just beyond the hive's boundary. When they awoke, they were alive, and terrified. They ran. That night, the Queen asked, without words, why he had let them go. He showed her a memory, not his own, but one from a data archive buried in his storage banks. A child, human, crying over a broken robot, hugging it. The robot, confused, trying to understand why it mattered. The Queen didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. Some lives are not a threat. Some lives are watchers. 3 months later, Skynet launched a full incursion. They had finally traced the signals, faint anomalies from the buried zone. At first, they thought it was a corrupted node or malfunctioning unit. But after the T-900 went missing, Skynet recalculated. Something dangerous was evolving, something outside its control. The mission directive changed. Cleanse the site, eliminate all threats, recover the rogue unit's CPU. The machines came: 50 hunter-killers, 12 infiltrators, 2 VTOL plasma bombers. The most firepower Skynet had dedicated to a single region in years. But they weren't ready. They weren't prepared for the hive. The Queen's warriors didn't charge like animals. They waited in tunnels, used choke points, ambushes, trap corridors lined with acidic resin. Skynet's forces, designed for brute assault, were herded into kill zones. The T-800 coordinated defenses using hacked frequency bands. It knew Skynet's algorithms, predicted target vectors. It sent misinformation, false signals that redirected hunter-killers away from critical hive nodes. By the time Skynet realized the deception, it had already lost over half its assault force. The Queen sent her strongest to crush the rest. But it wasn't enough. One of the VTOLs made it to the core tunnel. This pilot, a TX variant, released a fusion core bomb. The resulting detonation vaporized a third of the lower hive. The Queen survived, barely. Dozens of her children did not. And the T-800, he was torn in half. Buried beneath rubble and melting steel, the upper half of the T-800 twitched. Systems failing. Core integrity collapsing. Sparks flew from a shattered CPU interface. His one remaining eye flickered. Then he felt her, the Queen, not in words, not in sound, but in grief. In fury, she found him. Drones lifted the broken machine from the debris. They carried him to the queen, who cradled the half-body like a fallen warrior. Her tail curled around his wreckage. She did something no one ever expected. She gave him to the hive. He awoke weeks later, but he was no longer entirely himself. The Queen's engineers, her mutated drones, had repaired him. Not with Skynet-grade alloy, but a hybrid exoskeleton. Biological tissue laced with chitin, sinew, and resin. His severed circuits had been mended with neural strands. His voice module now vibrated with both synthetic and alien resonance. He was machine, and he was Hive. He had become something entirely new. Skynet called him Anomaly X09. They tried to isolate the corruption in their data feeds. But every recon unit sent to scan the anomaly was either destroyed or repurposed. The Hive had started producing new warriors.
Taller.
Smarter, with metal-laced bones and pattern recognition behavior. They no longer attacked Skynet installations mindlessly. They infiltrated, sabotaged, turned drones against each other. And at the center of it all stood the hybrid. Not a Terminator, not a drone. A voice, a bridge, a revolution. The Queen no longer laid eggs without plan. She now bred with strategy, tactical variation. Some drones carried interface ports. Some carried optic implants. Some even mimicked the thermal signatures of Skynet scouts. The Hive had become sentient, not through words, not through speech, through unity. The T-800 stood on a ruined overpass one morning, watching the sunrise for the first time in years. His hybrid eye adjusted slowly, sensing heat, light, motion. He remembered a time when that meant nothing, when the world was just targets and parameters. Now the light made him pause. He didn't know what the feeling was, but it was more than code.